This episode is brought to you by Ursa Minor Outfitters. Folks, I'm absolutely in love with my loon mug. It's handmade, it's an absolute piece of art. Whether it's at the office or at the house, people keep asking to check it out. If you're not a loon fan, they also have other beautiful mugs for wildlife fans of moose, bears, and eagles. They specialize in products highlighting the outdoors and local pride through quality design by local artists. They've even started expanding into items beyond mugs, like apparel, dog accessories, and soon candles and more. They also try to partner and highlight other small businesses, and in some cases, forego profits in lieu of charitable giving to help their community, such as the dog rescue. So check them out, UrsaMinorOutfitters.com, and enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. And for our four-legged hiking partners, they also have a portable silicone dog bowl and also a sweet over-the-collar dog bandana. Go check them out, UrsaMinorOutfitters.com, and don't forget to enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I'm your host, Ivan, and each week I'll be chatting with some amazing hikers from across the United States and abroad. Spring has finally arrived in the Pacific Northwest, and soon I'll be hitting the trails to record short-form episodes with hikers I meet along the way. Look out for those episodes to drop sometime in June for Season 3. In the meantime, we'll be asking some of your favorite hikers about their experiences and adventures. We always finish the episode off with a round of this or that questions all related to hiking. We have an amazing guest on today's episode. Elise has not only participated in the 52 Hike Challenge, but she is also a 52 Hike Challenge leader, as well as a certified hiking guide. You can follow her adventures on Instagram at hike_explore_recharge. I had a great time chatting with Elise on this episode. She shares what it's like to hike in both the East Coast and Southwest, an unexpected bear encounter, and her new company aimed at sparking passion and purpose in women's lives. Without further ado, let's jump into this episode with our guest, Elise. Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I have a really amazing guest with me today. Her name is Elise. We'll be talking about all her hiking adventures, both on the East Coast and down south in the Southwest. Elise, thank you for joining me on the podcast today. You know, we always like to start off with our guests by asking them how long they've been hiking for and how they got started.
I'm thrilled to have been asked to be on this podcast. Thank you so much. And to answer your question, how long have I been hiking? Well, I've been hiking for a pretty long time, but my first experience, there was a little bit of a break between when I first started hiking and my, more recent hiking adventures. So I've been hiking since my late teens. I grew up on the beaches of Long Island, so I was a bit of a beach baby. I spent my childhood and my teenage years at the seashore. It's a place that I'm very comfortable with. Spent all my summer days on the Atlantic Ocean, just enjoying the waves and the surf and everything that goes along with being at the beach. But I had the opportunity between my freshman and sophomore years in college to travel cross country for a summer and to hike and to backpack and to camp. And at that time, I went to many of the national parks all along the way. So that was my very early introduction to hiking. Life has a way of just being in charge of the things that you do. And so I left that summer with a lot of great memories and a real yearning to get back there and explore more. College, graduate school, marriage, children, a lot of that got put on hold. I had three very athletic boys. And so the time when they were growing up was dedicated to their pursuits. And I was actually very, very good with that, very comfortable with that. Again, there were twists and turns in life. It led me back to hiking. So these past couple years, it's just been an amazing journey. I've had the opportunity to to be out on trails all across the country, a little bit internationally. I love it. I can't think of another thing that I'd rather be doing right now with my time besides spending time with my family.
Your feed is really a kaleidoscope of hikes across not just the nation, but like you said, internationally. And you've hit some amazing places in the Southwest that I didn't even know of. I know that you kind of split your time between the East Coast and the Southwest, but what is it hiking on the East Coast? Because for me, being born and raised in the West Coast, I haven't had a chance yet to do much hiking over on the East Coast.
I mean, East Coast hiking is amazing. There's mountains, there's, of course, lots of woods, things like that. It's endless. I mean, the amount of trails, that are out east, it's just endless. What I love most about the East, though, especially the area where I'm based out of here, are waterfalls. So you're never at a loss for beautiful cascades and waterfalls. There's always a new place to explore.
And would you say that's one of the unique features in your region, in your home base, that you might not find elsewhere? Okay.
And not that there's not waterfalls elsewhere. I think that there, obviously throughout the country, there are many beautiful waterfalls. But I feel like the region and the area where I live, just because of all the streams and the brooks, there's cascades, there's little small waterfalls, there's big waterfalls, there's even a trail with 21 waterfalls. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's an experience. And especially if you go at a time when the water's really flowing, it's really just an entire day well spent.
Have you had a chance to go out there with maybe some of the spring melt from the winter snow?
I have.
And check out some of those waterfalls?
I have, and I can say that the only time that I haven't hiked there is in the winter. They do close the trails in the winter, for obvious safety reasons, and the more popular it becomes, they've had to do that. Now, people do go if you can ice pick and, hike your way up there. You have to check in and get permission to do that. And that is something I have not done, but the spring melt is amazing, just the flow and of the falls.
We're recording this episode in early spring, and I'm always interested in finding out where other hikers like to enjoy their springtime hikes. Do you have a favorite springtime hike, both locally and maybe outside of your home state?
I mean, I have honestly not been on a hike that I haven't liked. So that's a pretty open question. And I tend not to go back to places that I've been, except like the waterfall hike. I mean, that is something that is just, you do want to go multiple times. And it's great to go in early spring or late in the fall, because by then the crowds, have died down. But the great part is just seeking out places that I haven't been and exploring them. So
yeah, I think we share the same philosophy, because for me, there's one particular waterfall hike that got me into hiking that really just like struck a nerve in me. And I was like, okay, I'm into this. And that waterfall, I'll visit 3 times a year. And it's not a strenuous hike, but like you said, early spring, late fall, once the crowds of the summer kind of settle down.
Right.
It's always nice to kind of go back and visit that place. But
Sure.
I feel like you're probably the same way. The list is always growing on hikes, and you have to slowly check them off.
Yes.
As time becomes available.
That's right.
So I definitely share that philosophy.
That's right. And the more places you go, the more you realize there's just so much more to see. So,
and that kind of brings me to my next question is, Arizona comes up regularly in your feed.
Yeah.
And I feel like you really have explored all the regions within the state, not necessarily every single location, but like you've had a really good diverse selection of hikes. Do you have some favorite places to hike in the Grand Canyon State? Not necessarily hikes, but maybe regions?
I love the Superstition Mountains. Where I am based out of in Arizona is very nearby. And something that really draws me to a region is not only the terrain and the hikes themselves, but I love the history behind the places that I explore. And you'll see that on my feed, that I sometimes get really down deep into the weeds on, the history of different places. And that may not be for everybody, but that's just part of my hiking experience. So I find the area fascinating and beautiful and challenging and intimidating. I mean, there's so many different ways to explain the Superstition Mountains. I just remember the very first time I saw a picture of it, I was just like, I have to get there. So when I'm in Arizona, that I guess would be my go-to place, not necessarily the same trails, but definitely the area. Arizona is just a very diverse place. I didn't have that opinion of it. Years ago, the only time that I
Mhm.
had traveled through it, we sort of came through the valley, like where everybody goes, and you think, oh, it's a desert. And I was up in Kingman, Arizona, and that was really awesome. I was able to pick up pieces of turquoise, like right off the ground. I mean, that I still have those tiny
Wow.
little nuggets. It was that long ago. So I have a really great, vivid memory of some of those places in Arizona, and of course the saguaros. But I guess I didn't, really realize just how diverse the state is. So you can drive a couple of hours in any direction and just be somewhere that is so unlike anywhere else. I had an opportunity last summer to explore the Chiricahua Mountains, and just absolutely fascinating. One of those places that it's like, I got to go back, so.
Yeah, you're right. I think a lot of people, when they hear Arizona, they instantly picture desert. But like you said, places like Payson,
Mhm.
Sedona, Flagstaff, it
Right.
almost seems like you're in the Pacific Northwest or even like in Colorado, some of the scenery, and
Sure.
it changes so quick. Like you'll go from saguaros to pine trees within, less than 15 minutes when you're going up to Payson.
You're right. That drive up to Payson, up towards Sedona, places like that, that's exactly it. You can see right on the mountain where, it goes from saguaro to all of a sudden, you're up at a higher elevation. When I went out to hike in the Tonto National Monument, I was able to
Hmm.
score a very last minute spot to do a hike in the upper cliff dwellings. And
Oh,
so I
wow.
left the valley, and it was, a typical kind of warm day. And as I drove up over the mountain, I ran into like a snow squall. It was almost like a whiteout. I mean, it was amazing. Then you come back down the
Whoa.
other side into the Tonto Basin. I mean, the diversity of, climate, scenery, everything else is really something that makes Arizona, I think, very special.
I would agree. And you already touched base on this, but one thing that really caught my eye is that you do provide detailed history on some of the hikes
Mhm.
or some of the sites that you see. And we did a deep dive into your Instagram, and the one place that like instantly stood out to me was Sears Cay Ruin in Tonto National Forest.
Yes.
Can you share with our listeners a little bit about that hike and the history behind the ruins?
Sure. I'd first like to say that it actually is it's not one of the harder hikes. So if there's anybody out there listening and this kind of sparks a little interest on their part, I would say take the drive. It's definitely well worth it. So the Sears Cay Ruin is one of many fortresses that was built by the Hohokam people back, 1,000 or so years ago. And it's in the Tonto National Forest on the outskirts of the town of Carefree. So that was just, how they would build their homes and fortresses, up on the sides of mountains, these great stone structures. The only thing that's left there now is just, rocks and the outline of what was once a fortress that had 40 rooms.
Mhm.
And they estimate that there were probably about 100 people, who lived there. They're not really sure what caused the fort to be abandoned, somewhere around 1200. And they feel that eventually members of the Tonto Apache tribe claimed the land. So there's so much of the history there that remains to be uncovered. But definitely, that was a really cool, interesting hike.
Yeah, it definitely caught my attention. And it's one of those places that you don't really hear too much about. I know that Arizona has a lot of great ruins, and some are hikeable, and then others you have to scramble. So
Mhm.
to know that that's an easy hike for most individuals to visit is something really special.
Yes. Yes, it is.
And the other detailed post that really caught my attention, and that's because I am a huge fan of huckleberries, is your post about the Huckleberry Lookout Trail in
Yes.
Montana.
Uh-huh.
I didn't even know this, but they used to be known as hurtleberries. And then it sounds like through just people maybe mispronouncing it, it became huckleberries.
Right.
Is that what you kind of found when you did your research on them?
I did. I found that same thing very, very interesting. So, oh gosh, what could you say about huckleberries? I mean, mean, hiking on a trail where there's berries and things on the side is truly something that is fun and scary at the same time, because you walk along and you just pick them. You pick them and you eat them. And it's like, being a child out in a berry patch. I mean, I think that in a lot of ways, that's what it makes you feel like. But the other feeling that sort of washes over you is, well, you know who eats these berries, and that would be the bears. And with a patch so prolific and berries still growing, you kind of have one hand on the berries that you're about to pick. And then you're also scanning, and listening for any sound in the brush beyond you, because at any point you could be sharing a meal of huckleberries with a very hungry bear. So I liked the huckleberry, lookout trail. I think it was, one of those trails near Glacier that I don't know that it gets visited that often. So it was kind of a fun little hike to be on.
And was that inside the park or outside the park?
It was along the way to Polebridge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's so much. I think people are very quick to rush to the national parks, and for very good reason. I mean, especially a park like Glacier, it's gorgeous. But up in Montana, I had an amazing time exploring the area around Flathead Lake. That was really neat. And the Hungry Horse Reservoir, there's all sorts of trails. I even did some kayaking in the reservoir. And on my website, there's one little video clip at the bottom that you'll see a kayak kind of gliding through the water. It was an inflatable yellow kayak. It almost doesn't look real. I mean, when I filmed the video, I was fortunate enough to have someone along with me that time. A lot of times I do go solo, but that time I had somebody and they were paddling the kayak. So that was great because I got to sit there and film the whole thing. But it doesn't look real. And, when I first shared it, people were asking me, like, is that real? It doesn't look real. And it was just so beautiful. It was one of those days that if you asked me where we launched out of, I probably couldn't tell you the exact spot. We came upon an island in the middle of the reservoir. We pulled a kayak over. We strung a hammock. We ate lunch. I mean, it was a marvelous day. It was a day of adventure that you kind of wish all your days were like.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I got to ask, Elise, what's your favorite wild berry?
What's my favorite wild berry? I would have to say blueberries. So very similar to huckleberries. I like blueberries.
Yeah, I would say huckleberries are my favorite, but I don't know if you've heard of them. I've only had them in Idaho, thimbleberries.
I have heard of thimbleberries, actually. I came upon them on the trail. I'm trying to think of where. We were outside of Essex, Montana, and I still had cell phone service. So I came upon these berries and I did a quick Google search to see if they were edible, and they were delicious. So yes, as of recently, I have heard of thimbleberries.
Yeah, I haven't found them outside of Idaho and Montana, but they are a treat.
Yeah. And I find that the huckleberries are very similar to Maine blueberries, which are tiny little blueberries that you find growing there. So, I mean, any berry is good for you.
And, one thing that I am truly excited to talk to you about is your experience as a 52 hike challenge leader.
Yes.
This is the first year that I'm doing the challenge. For our listeners that might not be aware of the challenge, can you give them a little bit of history behind the challenge? And also, what is it like leading some of these hikes that you've done in the past?
Well, I started to notice 52 Hike Challenge, appearing on my feed quite a while back. And so I decided to sort of investigate a little bit more. And I like to participate in some of these challenges. Just first of all, I like to support organizations that champion hiking and being outside and living a healthy lifestyle. So I do, something called the AZ Bootleg 100, which happens in Arizona, where you hike 100 miles, within 100 days. I mean, I'm kind of actually, I completed that in a little over a month when I was there because I'm not there all the time. I had to get it in. Dirtbag Gypsies, Arizona Adventure Group, they all have their challenges. But 52 Hike Challenge is something that, anyone, anywhere can get involved with. And it's basically a challenge which encourages you to get out 52 times a year to hike. And those hikes can be at your own pace, at your own distance, wherever you want them to be. And I believe in theory, it would be, at least once a week. To get out there to make your 52 hikes. I mean, some people blow past 52 hikes very quickly, other people they take it slow. But I think overall, it's just, again, a type of challenge that just encourages you to get outside. So it's always nice meeting people on those hikes. I do some informal hikes where I just sort of post in the group and say, I'm going out today, or, going out on Friday. Anybody want to join me? It's been a lot of fun being involved with that organization.
I feel like a large portion of people that participate try to start it at the beginning of each new year. But the great thing about the challenge is you can start it whenever. It doesn't have to be at the start of the year.
Exactly.
Do you have any tips or advice for hikers that are interested in participating in the challenge?
My tips and advice always starts off with, safety. Go at your own speed, at your own pace, in a place that you're comfortable. Don't fall prey or victim to looking at social media and, looking out at these people that are hiking mountains or hiking, 10, 15 miles in a day. If a half mile is where you're going to start, or a mile, and it's going to be on a flat loop trail someplace, a rail trail, then do that. But just get out, and you'll find that over time, that your tolerance for and your endurance for hiking and for being outside will increase. So that would be my advice. Just do it.
That's solid advice. And, the one thing that I'm noticing already with my challenge is it's motivating me to cross off some of the hikes that have been on my list for a while, where there's so many hikes to do, but especially coming into spring, crossing off those spring hikes has definitely been a motivator, especially through the challenge.
Yes. And that is the good thing about challenges, is that it sort of, I don't want to say forces, I don't like to use that word, but it does motivate you to get out on the trails. Maybe you're going to wake up that day and say, oh, it's a little cloudy, or I don't feel 100% up to going out. But then you think, I decided to do this, and I'm going to get out there and make the best of it. So I think the challenge is good.
Yeah, same here. And outside of being a challenge leader, you're also a member of the board of directors for the American Hiking Guide Association. You have dual certifications. You're also a life empowerment coach. You've been able to combine both those to form a wonderful organization, Hike, Explore, Recharge, otherwise known as HER. Can you share with our listeners a little bit about HER and how it came about?
I would be happy to. So I'd like to just start by saying that it was an absolute honor to be approached by the American Hiking Guide Association to interview for a spot on their board of directors. They are just the organization that oversees all certified hiking guides in the United States, and they are in the process of being considered for international certification as well. And this organization, has only been around for a decade or so, and or maybe a little bit more than that. But it's very important, because there's a difference between a certified hiking guide and just somebody who goes out on the trail and says, well, I'll be your hiking guide. It's like any other certification that you receive. You go through a rigorous training, just like to be a certified yoga instructor or certified life coach. I mean, there's criteria that you have to meet, which prepares you to help other people in that area. So it's a very interesting way that Hike, Explore, Recharge came about. My background and my original education was in communication disorders, speech and language pathology, and I had a personal reason for going into that field. So that's where it all began. My late husband and I were in technology for many years, and we did a lot of great things in that field. And some things changed, kind of disrupted my life, if I could put it quite frankly. And I was struggling, so you realize that you go from a place in your life where everything is good to all of a sudden your struggle. And it's just my nature to fight my way out of it. We can sit there and say, oh, this is terrible what happened, but ultimately you need to figure out a way around it. So that's how I got involved with becoming a life empowerment coach. It was at a point in my life where I realized that, I myself could benefit from some life coaching. So I went that route, and then decided that I'm probably a bit more resilient than a lot of other women that were in similar situations to mine. What comes in mind is people always say, you're brave, you're strong, you're this, you're that. I'm not sure that I'm any of those things. I just feel I am resilient. So I decided that the best way to turn this situation around was to actually get the skills to help other women in similar situations. And that sort of launched me into life empowerment coaching. And I focused at that point on women from underserved communities. I worked at colleges and I spoke and was a keynote speaker. I did some writing on the topic, hosted some seminars and symposiums. And I also worked with women that were in non-traditional female roles who found themselves in the middle of, working in a male-dominated field. This was a little bit before the whole, Me Too movement, and they were struggling. I found that work very rewarding. And then as my own personal time freed up in terms of family, my children getting older, I had more time. That's what propelled me back into hiking. So the big concern from my family was, well, you're out there by yourself, you're in the woods. Are you safe? Are you this? Are you that? And my initial response was, yeah, I'm fine. And again, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I probably wasn't as prepared as I really needed to be doing some of the things I did. I decided that I would become a hiking guide. I mean, how much more prepared can you be to be out in the wilderness by yourself than to become a certified hiking guide? So I went through that whole process of becoming certified. And then it just was very logical for me to put those two together and to form a company, an organization that takes women out on travel adventures, but also combines the elements of not just hiking. There are some wonderful big companies out there that large group tours, even some small group tours, that if you want to go hike and backpack in the Grand Canyon, you want to go sleep in a tent, you want, that whole experience, there's already some wonderful companies out there. So what I focus on is more the H, the E, and the R, which is her, and it's hike. We do hiking. Of course, that's a big component of it. The E is for the exploration. And that exploration comes in terms of exploring the culture, the history, the geography of the area where we are, even the cuisine. And the recharge part is the part where I pull in professionals from parallel industries to maybe it would be an energy healer. Maybe it would be someone whose focus was meditation or yoga. And I incorporate that into a trip so that you get a very well-balanced experience. And hopefully you come out of your days away feeling very energized, recharged by being, among a group of like-minded people, that you share a community, you share, your hopes, your dreams, your struggles, and your joys of being out.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. And the way you've been able to mix the hiking element into it and bring a way to recharge people's physically, emotionally, mentally, you're really targeting each part that makes an individual resilient.
Yeah.
So that's amazing what you're doing.
I appreciate that. I form templates for my trips, and then ideally a small group of women, 3 to 4, no more than 5, who want to travel together. So it could be a business, it could be a group of friends, it could be a family, or sometimes just random people that come together. You could sign up solo, but if I'm focusing on a small group, then what I like to do with this template is to say, where are you physically? What are you capable of? What do you want to do? Because the last thing you want to do is to take somebody out. You're going to get that same experience being out in the wilderness, being out on a trail, out on a hike, whether you're hiking a couple miles or whether you're going for a big long hike, whether it's, extended elevation or whether you're on an easy to moderate trail. The whole experience of being outside, of getting the time outdoor and the fresh air and sunshine is really the key element there.
You've been able to put together some amazing trips in the past, and you have some great trips coming up. Can you share with our listeners a few of the trips that you've done in previous years, and then some of the trips that are coming up in 2023?
Yeah, well, the company is actually very new. So I have been guiding hikes, taking people out individually and sometimes even in small groups, for a while now. But some of the really exciting trips that I have, I've formed some wonderful partnerships. And I think that that's the most important thing about being in a business like this is the partnerships that you form. So I have some what I consider to be very exclusive opportunities to guide some hikes up onto, native land up in conjunction with some Navajo guides. So Canyon de Chelly Tours is one of my partners, and also Navajo Tours USA. They target different areas. Canyon de Chelly Tours is an Indigenous woman-owned business, and they're just awesome to work with. And so we have the opportunity to tour parts of the canyon and go down into the canyon and places that if you just show up at Canyon de Chelly, you just can't get in there by yourself. You need to be on a guided tour. And the same with Navajo Tours USA. You have the opportunity to explore some regions in the Bisty Badlands, which that was just that was an otherworldly trip. So those are some of the places that I absolutely look forward to guiding, some hikes to.
We'll be sure to list the website so people can check out the upcoming lists or the upcoming trips for 2023. Canyon de Chelly I never got a chance to make it up there while I lived in Arizona, but it's definitely on my list because it's beautiful. And one of my favorite YouTubers is from Arizona, Jerry Arizona. He just posted his video from doing a tour down on the canyon floor, and the things that you not only see, but then to have a guide to tell you the history behind it. Like I love the history behind places. Yeah. So that's a place that's right down my alley.
Well, the first time that I went, Canyon de Chelly has been on my list of places that I've wanted to go for a very long time. And of course, was closed all during the COVID years. Something that struck me, the very first picture that I ever saw that piqued my interest was Canyon del Muerto and the big pictograph on the wall of the Spanish Inquisition. And I said to myself, I'm going to get there one day. I'm going to get there one day. So I researched it and how do I do this? And, how do I get there? And finally, when everything came into play and I hired a guide to go down myself, we were traveling along through the canyon and he stopped. And he stopped right in front of the pictograph and he looked up and he pointed to it and he said, I grew up here. He said, you see that little shack, a little home? He said, that is my grandmother's and she would herd sheep. He said, and as a child, this was my playground. I would come down. It was one of those times that I got a chill through my body. And he went on to, just tell more about it and tell his experience there. And I said, of all the places and all the people that I could be connected with at this exact moment, was him. It was absolutely an amazing experience.
Wow. Yeah, you're making it definitely climbing the ranks of my places to visit.
I'll talk to you long about that afterwards. You just give me a shout out, and we'll review a great itinerary for you.
Definitely. I feel like some hikers have a summit ritual or end of the hike routine that they do. Maybe it's a favorite snack or meal, some sort of drink, or even just a moment of zen. Do you have a regular custom that you do when you reach your destination, or maybe when you make it back out?
Well, I'm not sure that it's a ritual, but I absolutely, when I reach the destination of where I set out for, I do take a moment to pause. I give thanks. And I'm very grateful in that moment to be able to have the opportunity to be where I am, to be able to experience what I've just experienced, to still be here on this earth to do these things. Sometimes the world isn't a very friendly or good place to be, but there are so many great moments and so many great places and so many great people that are in our lives and that pass through our lives. So I would say that probably my, call it a moment of zen, but I do that every single time I reach my destination.
Yeah, I feel like that's becoming a common thing with the hikers that I've spoken to on the podcast is, of course you want to take the pictures, especially if it's a picturesque place, but a lot lot of people just, once they sit down for the first time, they just take a moment to give thanks and to take it all in.
Right.
And that's a wonderful thing.
Yes, it is.
Now, being a certified hiking guide, I'm interested in hearing your response to this upcoming question. But what would you consider to be your most valuable piece of hiking gear?
Well, this may not be the traditional answer, but I consider, my satellite phone, my Garmin, to be my most important piece, because the first thing you want to be able to do is, if you get in danger, is to be able to signal someone. So I know food is important, water, shelter, there's many things that are important, but I feel that communication device is very important. Cell phones are not reliable, and I don't ever venture anywhere that I know is out of range without it.
I would agree with you there. That's the one thing that I used to only carry it if I knew I didn't have cell phone coverage, but now I'm starting to carry it
Yes.
everywhere, just because you just never know. Maybe your phone dies.
Correct.
I've never had to use it, but to have that option is amazing.
Yes, it is. I agree.
Now, throughout all your hikes and travels, have you had any close calls, whether it's getting lost for a short period of time or maybe just an unexpected wildlife encounter? Maybe Mother Nature even threw you a curveball and caught you by surprise. Have you had any of those experiences?
Well, I've had one experience with wildlife that I will never forget that day. It was a very, very close encounter. So, I had been hiking a couple times up in Montana and, some other areas. And I, was very fortunate to see, moose and elk and pronghorns and bison and all kinds of things out in the wild. And I just kept saying, I would love to see a grizzly bear out in the wild. So I did catch a little glimpse of Grizzly 399 and her 4 cubs when I was in Grand Teton National Park. That was, very, very unexpected. I spent quickly, because that actually wasn't the wildlife encounter, but I spent a week there, and everybody, there's talk about, bear jams. I learned what a bear jam was. People lined up on the side of the road just stalking this poor bear. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be one of those people who's encroaching, blah, blah, blah. And just happened to be that the very last night, that I was there, we were driving along the road, and the photographers were out, stopped quickly, looked out, and you could just see her on the horizon running by with the cubs. It was, to this day, it's still one of my fondest memories. She's an amazing bear. But I was hiking up in Glacier in the backcountry, had made it up to Granite Park Chalet, and it was the actual night of the grizzly, which was very interesting. It was a night that two many years ago, maybe 40 years ago, when 2 young girls on opposite parts of Glacier National Park were mauled and killed by grizzly bears. And that was the events of that night, is what caused the national park to actually change the way they used to feed the bears. The bears used to be entertainment. So they would feed the bears in the bear pit, and the guests would, every evening go out and look to watch the bears eat. And then once that happened, they realized they were habituating these bears, and that was probably not a good thing. So, long hike up there. On the way, look off the trail down into the hollow below. And there was a grizzly a grizzly sow with her 2 cubs in tow. And she was just running along. And that was a moment where you just stop, because they're very fast. And if they decide that they're going to come up the trail and come after you, so, you kind of like, okay, what are you can read all you want about what to do when you actually see a grizzly bear, but then when you actually see one, it's very different. So she ran off with her cubs, and it was like, wow, that was close. Go further down the trail, I come almost face to face with a sheep, mountain sheep with the big curly antlers.
Yeah.
But then
the bighorn.
Yeah, bighorn, that's the word. So get on to Granite Park Chalet. There's, no electricity, no running water, and you have to hike another quarter of a mile down the trail to potable water. So we got there, checked in, and the ranger said, listen, I just want to let you know that there has been an adolescent grizzly on the prowl. It hasn't bothered anyone, but it has been around. Now, we haven't spotted it in about 2 weeks, but I just want to tell everyone that when you go down to get your water, make sure you have your bear spray with you. Don't just figure because you're here, you're fine. fine. So we did that, went down, we got our water. My hiking partner said to me, I'm going to head on up the trail. The campground where one of the attacks took place was maybe another quarter mile up the trail. And he said, I'm going to head up there and take a look at the campground. Do you want to come? And I sat down on a wooden platform that was near the potable water tanks. And I said, no, you go on ahead. I said, I'm just going to sit here. And I spotted a butterfly in the mud. So I took my camera out and I started to videotape this butterfly. And it was just like mud puddling. It was just flapping its wings. And after a very long hike to Granite Park Chalet, it was like, oh, this is perfect. This is just what I need. I'm just sitting here. I'm relaxing. I'm in the moment. And all of a sudden, I feel this hand come over my mouth. And I feel my head turn to the right. And like my initial response was like, oh my gosh, I'm being attacked. And then I heard a very familiar voice in my ear say, quiet, don't say a word. And I looked up and I saw a bear running up the hillside. And I turned around and his eyes were as big as saucers. And he said to me, didn't you see that bear? And I said, no. And he said, well, I was coming back from the campground. He said, and I was coming around the bend and I spotted you. He said, that bear wasn't more than 10 yards up the trail from you. And he mustn't have caught wind of you because he walked right across the trail. You didn't see him because you never moved. He said, and for that moment, I knew that if I yelled, I would alert both of you. I knew that if I took my bear spray out, I'd hit you first. He's like,
Oh, wow.
And I thought to myself, I don't ever want to see a grizzly bear again. So
oh my.
I wound up that we actually did see one more grizzly bear. So I wound up seeing 3 grown grizzlies and 2 baby grizzlies. And I'm like, I've had enough, crossing that off my list of things that I want to see out in the wild. So yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That would count as a encounter. Yes.
Yeah, I have a healthy respect for bears. Yeah. It's one of those things where I would love to see one, but then once I'm actually like hiking and you're out there, it's like, I don't want to see one this close anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. It sounds like a great thing until you actually, you actually see it. I think more scary are the mountain lions, but we're in their territory. So, and I don't think you can look out for them because you're not going to see them. They're going to see you first.
Yeah, definitely. And in my neck of the woods, we have a few black bears.
Yes, we do.
And I carry bear spray, but it's more if I ever encounter a mountain lion more than a bear.
Yes. Yep.
I used to not carry it until, I'm not saying they're happening more frequently, but you just hear about them more.
Yeah. My only experience with a mountain lion was seeing one run across the road in Flagstaff. It was dusk.
Oh, wow.
I was driving back from a hike and I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I naturally assumed it was a deer, and it ran across the road and I just saw the swish of the tail. And I was like, whoa, that was frightening. That was definitely frightening. But in addition to bear spray, I carry one of those little foghorns. They're tiny. You can put them in your pocket.
Smart.
Yeah, because they're great. I mean, for anything to scare off. I don't know that it's actually going to scare off an animal, but it sure does make a lot of noise. And, again, you can alert other hikers. So it's a good little thing to throw in your pack.
Oh, yeah. That's a good idea. I'm going to have to add that to the pack list this year.
And it's lightweight. So
now the new year is well underway, Elise. Do you have any upcoming hiking goals for 2023 and beyond?
I do. So I've been holding on to a permit for Havasu Falls for 3 years now. So I'm going in May if the campground doesn't get washed out by another flood again. But as we know, the whole falls area and that whole region was closed during COVID due to it being on indigenous land. So I have just been waiting in anticipation of getting down into the canyon and seeing the falls.
Oh, that's going to be awesome.
Yes.
Oh, that's going to be a great experience.
Yes, exactly.
Now, are there any trips planned for the Pacific Northwest?
Well, the Pacific Northwest has been something that's been on my list of places that I've wanted to get to. And I just haven't been able to. So there's a couple good months in the summertime that I like to travel up in the upper tiers of the country. And it just past couple years, I've spent my time in, Wyoming and Montana and exploring all the different areas, northern Arizona, Utah. So I'm inching my way over I'd like to get over to Idaho, Washington, up to Alaska. I mean, I'd love, dream is to fly over to Katmai. I mean, there's just so much to do, but definitely to see the falls in Oregon and, hike in the Cascades. So I hope to get there soon.
Wow, please reach out if you do. Yeah.
I will.
Well, that was it for the regular questions, Elise. I had a really awesome time talking to you about your experiences and what you're doing with your organization. This next little section is the this or that questions.
Okay.
They're all hiking related. I'm going to give you 2 hiking topics, and you kind of just choose the one that you prefer out of the 2.
Okay.
So the first one is ascending or descending?
Ascending. Descending is a little more difficult on the knees. So.
How about waterfalls or summits?
Well, that's a hard one. When I'm on the, East Coast, it's waterfalls. West Coast, it's summits. They're 2 totally, different terrains. The summits here on the East Coast, I just don't feel are as grand as the summits out west. And like I said, I'm very partial to the waterfalls out east. So
no, that's fair.
Yep.
And how about switchbacks or straight up?
I prefer switchbacks. I like to take it all in. Switchbacks gives you that opportunity to not kill yourself as much as going straight up sometimes. Although straight up could be a lot of fun, but I would say I'm a switchback person.
And how about trek poles or freehand?
One trek pole that I carry in my backpack. I always like to keep one hand free. I've never really gotten into the rhythm of using 2 trek poles, although I do understand that it's helpful river crossings, or stream crossings, things like that. So 1 and 1.
Okay, I like that. And now when it comes to your hikes, do you fuel up before a hike or do you fill up after?
I am not a huge morning eater, so I nibble along the way and then I'll eat a meal afterwards.
And when it comes to bushwhacking or going around, do you have a preference?
Well, I think just my training as being a hiking guide tends to make me want to go around versus bushwhacking for a couple of reasons. And I mean, sometimes bushwhacking is fun, but I'm always very cognizant of the terrain that we're on. I mean, there's some areas, especially, out west, where you just don't want to bust the crust. So you can be going off trail and disturbing areas that are protected or being, rehabilitated. Plus, you never know what you're going to encounter off the trail. When you see a clear trail in front of you, well, you could see a snake if it's on the trail, if you're bushwhacking. And so both places that I love to hike, Pennsylvania and Arizona, one has timber rattlesnakes, one has diamondback rattlesnakes, but they're both very real and they're both, and I've come across them. So, they're out there and I'm just not wanting to take the chance and step on one.
Gotcha. And when you come across a body of water, do you jump in or do you stay dry?
I try to stay dry at all costs. I'm not the best swimmer. Of all the things that I can do, swimming has never been something that I'm spectacular at. So I don't mind getting wet. I don't mind crossing streams. I mean, it's kind of fun. But yeah, I'm not a jump-in person. I wish I was, but I'm not.
And this next one, I'm really interested because you get to see both. Do you prefer sunsets or sunrises?
You do get to see the best of both worlds. I think that I prefer sunsets. You're at that point in the day where you've had a full day. And I think to have the opportunity to sit down and to actually watch that sun go down and disappear, knowing that it's going to pop back up the next day, it's, for me, it's a great time, again, to just, to be grateful, to give gratitude to a day well spent.
Yeah. And, you visiting Arizona and being able to stay there for periods of time, you see potentially some of the best sunsets in the nation.
Absolutely. Oh my God. The Arizona skies are, they can't be beat.
Again, this is another question because you get to experience both of them, but spring flowers or fall colors?
Well, they're both beautiful. I think that I would say spring flowers. It's just you're coming out of winter and you're seeing everything pop up right now. Daffodils and, the hyacinths and the tulips, they're all popping up out of the ground. And it's just a promise of warm weather ahead.
I like that. And when it comes to social media, do you tag a hike or do you not tag a hike? I
will not tag a hike if it is a remote place that, isn't visited often. My relationship with social media is maybe different than, some of the other people that are on social media. I will tag it if it's something that is local where people should get out and hike, something that's a well-known hiking spot.
I like that.
Yeah. my whole Instagram account actually came as a result of, some of the hiking that I did. I would just post it personally. I don't consider myself an exceptional photographer by any means, but it started as a journal, my own journal of my hikes, is that I would take pictures of it. And I would always start out by taking a picture of the trail sign so I wouldn't forget, which actually defined my Instagram account for quite a long time. People would always say, "Oh, I know it's your account because I see the trail sign."
Trail signs.
I varied from that a little bit, but my friends would always say to me, you should, you've been to so many interesting places, like you should write a book or do it. It's like, who wants to read another book about another hiker and all the places that I've been? But it did make me think, and I said, just for my own being, to have a platform where you could kind of upload your pictures, write a little story about where you've been. It started out as a personal journal. And I think that I've kind of stayed very true to that, I'm very genuine to that original goal. It's, I don't do it for the likes or the follows, I'm not, some people just take the most gorgeous selfies and they're, beautiful women and men that should be posting those pictures, good for them. I like to focus on the scenery. And as I said before, more a little bit about the story or the places that I go. So that's my relationship with social media.
Yeah, I really enjoy the history and background that you give on some of the places you visit.
Thank you.
And for me, I kind of use it as a journal too, but also as a reference guide, because they kind of all blend together over the years. And it's always nice to be like, was there snow on this trail at this time?
Right.
When's the wildflower season? So yeah, it's a good way to kind of keep track of of where you've been. And
I agree.
Well, I had an absolute blast talking with you, Elise, this morning. For folks that want to learn a little bit more about you or follow you online on social media, where can they find you, both your personal account and then where can they find a little bit more about her?
You can find me on Instagram. I do have a Facebook page, but I have to say that I'm much more active on Instagram, and that would be hike_explore_recharge. And that's where you can find me on Instagram. My website, which is now up and running, and that's hikeexplorerecharge.com. And you can learn all about, a little bit about my background, trips and places, templates of trips, upcoming trips. And that's basically where you could find me.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to include those in the episode notes so people can follow and see what's available on the website. Elise, really thankful for you to come on and share your experiences and your story. I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Well, I appreciate, as I, started this episode out saying, I appreciate being asked. I think, hikers and hiking comes in all different forms, all different age groups. I think it's something that just unites people, and I'm a very strong proponent of it. I've hiked with people that are my age. I've hiked with people that are older than me, and I've had the opportunity to hike with a lot of younger people. And I just think that it's the joy of being outside and experiencing this beautiful world that we live in, that for the most part is free to us. All that it asks is that we respect it.
Thank you once again to Elise for joining us on this episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. Be sure to follow her on Instagram at hike_explore_recharge to keep up with her latest adventures. And to learn more about her, Hike, Explore, and Recharge, be sure to check out the episode's show notes. We'll be putting out new episodes every week throughout the spring. Please be sure to like and subscribe to not miss out on those. Also, follow us on Instagram at Hikes and Mikes. Catch you on the next one. This episode's music was created by Ketsa. Follow him on Instagram at Ketsa Music. This episode is brought to you by Flip Socks. Whether you're on the trail, on the job, or in the yard, Flip Socks will keep Mother Nature out of your boots with their innovative nylon sleeve. You no longer need to worry about any annoying debris getting trapped in your boots during your hikes. Simply flip down the nylon sleeve over any boot to prevent Mother Nature from finding its way inside, keeping your feet comfortable all day long. To get your first pair, visit flipsocks.com and enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% 10% off your order. And for listeners who use the promo code at checkout, I'll be donating 100% of the Season 2 promo code proceeds to Big City Mountaineers, who provide transformative experiences through connections to nature that strengthen life skills and build community for youth and disinvested communities across the nation. So if you're tired of bits and pieces of the trail finding its way into your hiking boots, pick up a pair of flip socks today with the promo code HikesMikes10 to get 10% off. For website and promo code, see the episode description.